Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. As I mentioned yesterday when we talked about Valores, Malia and I went to Colorado for 4 days to the greater Denver area. We neither of us had ever been. It's not. I've been to the Denver airport quite a few times on layovers. I've never left the airport, so this is my first time exploring, Colorado. And we planned to. The concerts were Monday and Tuesday. We flew out on Sunday. The plan was to take public transit, there's a bunch of bus lines that run to Fort Collins. Go up to Fort Collins, get our room. Malia worked those days, so she would work Monday, and then we'd have some time to kind of explore Fort Collins, the downtown area, and all that sort of stuff. And then after the concert, stay this again in Fort Collins, and then the following day she would work. Then we'd drive to Denver and go to the show. And then Wednesday, wake up, still in Denver, head to the airport. Public transport or Uber the whole time. So when we got to the Denver airport, what we found was figuring out the public transport situation was not easy. There was no bus office or train office or whatever to tell us, here's how you get to Fort Collins from here. There was these little ticketing stations, and none of them worked. The app didn't list the buses. It did when we first landed, and it didn't. It was really confusing. And at some point, I was like, why don't we just rent a car? Which turned out to be the greatest decision ever. I think the car cost us like $250. The bus was going to be like $120, and then Uber's on top of that. We would have spent way more than $250, and we would have been restricted to the downtown areas. Plus, I'm 45 and I have never rented a car, so it was just like, let's rent a car. Let's do more firsts. So we rented a little Toyota 4Runner. It's not little; it's pretty big, and that was the best decision. We ended up getting to Fort Collins Sunday evening at like 4 or 5. We checked into a Best Western, which was whatever. It was fine. It was actually it turned out being a very nice little hotel, newly remodeled sort of place. And we went into downtown Fort Collins, walked around Sunday evening, ate at a cute little restaurant / pub. Just kind of hung out, and we were like, man, I really like this little town. Now what, So, the following Monday, she woke up. So that was it. Like, we spent Sunday evening in Fort Collins. She woke up the next day. We were kind of like, what are we going to do today? I don't know. She worked. When she got done with work in the afternoon, after we checked out of the hotel, it was kind of like, now what? And so we decided to just kind of drive, and we drove into Fort Collins. We drove past Fort Collins. Let's just drive to the foothills and see the foothills of the mountains. So we drove down to this huge dam structure. I'm like, well, what is this? And she's looking on her map, and she's like, well, we can go up there. We saw cars. So we drove around, and we went up, and we discovered, I think it's called like Horsetooth Canyon or something like that. Whatever. But there's pictures of a reservoir, which was ginormous. Like, this is a lake. This was a huge reservoir. And so we drove along the reservoir for a little bit before coming down out of the mountains and going back into Fort Collins for the concert. So we got to explore a little bit of the mountains, and she was like, man, I'd really like to do that some more. And I said, okay, we'll figure that out. Tomorrow, being Tuesday, we had plenty of free time from the time she quit work to get down to Denver, and we thought, well, we'll just go explore. So we left the foothills. We went back into downtown Fort Collins, and surprisingly, like, a ton of businesses downtown were closed. I guess Mondays are very slow in that town, so there's a lot of businesses closed. So we didn't get, I was hoping to see some bookstores or whatever. We didn't really get to do any of that. We ended up just kind of hanging out in the downtown area. We ate lunch at a little Mexican place. We went to a little indoor putt-putt golf place. That was pretty cool. We got a couple of drinks and just putt-putted. And just kind of hung out until the venue opened. And then when the venue opened, Did we have dinner? Well, that Mexican. We had that Mexican. That was our dinner. Then we went to the concert. So Tuesday, so this was when the car really paid off. I mean, it was awesome to go up and see the reservoir and be in the foothills, all that sort of stuff. But Tuesday, she was like, at the end of that road is a national park. I've never been to a national park. Let's go like explore. And I said, sure. So she got done with work. She worked earlier than usual and later than whatever, extra so that we could go do some exploring. And we left. We had to check out by noon. We left at noon. The concert wasn't until 8 p.m. that night, so we had 7 hours basically. Like, let's go. We stopped at a Jack in the Box, which was fantastic. I have not had Jack in the Box for. I left Hawaii in 2001, and I maybe had Jack in the Box. I remember there used to be one in New Jersey, and I think maybe I ate there once, but I don't remember. It could be more than 24 years or so since I've had Jack in the Box. And I know that's a weird thing to be excited about. It wasn't great. I ordered the same stuff I ordered when I was in the military, and it was worse quality, smaller port. It was just not as good. But whatever, it was Jack in the Box. I haven't been there in 20 years. So we got that real quick and just headed on to the Rocky Mountain National Park. And that was amazing. You know, we ended up spending a few hours driving around Rocky Mountain National Park, looking at all the amazing sights. We looked for the bighorn sheep. We didn't see them. They weren't out when we drove through, which was a shame because, you know, I would have loved to have seen those. But I did get to see the Stanley Hotel. I didn't go in or anything like that. Like, I'm a fan. I'm a Stephen King fan, I guess, and I'm at least a fan of The Shining book and movie. A huge David Lynch fan. So seeing the inspiration was cool, but it was weird that it wasn't this isolated hotel like you expect. It was in a town. Like it's right there, right? Sure, maybe in Stephen King's day it was. But the interesting thing was when we got to the national park, like he mentions in the book a whole lot about the pass closing during the winter because of the, you know, whatever, and that's why this family has to stay there to take care of the inn. And when we got into the national park, you could only do about 7 or 8 miles of the park because the passage through the Rockies to the other half of the park is closed because there's 30 feet of snow. And that just was mind-blowing. Like 30 feet? Yeah, 30 feet of snow. So we did this loop where we were supposed to see the sheep. We didn't get to see the sheep. Went and saw the Stanley Hotel and then went right back into the park and then went down to this area where you can hike up and see some lakes. And we ended up doing that. We ended up parking and hiking for a couple of miles, like a mile and a half or so, 2 miles. I don't know. I think it was a half mile one. Anyway, so we made it to about 9,700 feet and saw a few mountain lakes, took pictures. They were all frozen. It was cold, which we were very unprepared for. I was in jeans and my traditional Adidas. Like, I was definitely not prepared for hiking in the mountains in snow. But it was fairly warm. Like, we never got cold. It was okay. Just my feet got wet, right? But it was fantastic. It was so beautiful to be out there and see all of that. We spent, you know, most of that day, like, we kind of cut it close, honestly. We got back into town. We decided to not go to our hotel. We were not aware that Valores was going on at 8. They went on at 9 the previous night. So we expected we had that time. Thankfully, we didn't push it because we got into Denver. We just decided to not check in until after the concert. We went and had dinner at a little, it was called the English Bulldog, or the British Bulldog. It was a little British pub. I had some bangers and mash and a strong bow and watched some football. And so after that, that was like a catty corner block away from the venue. We went to the venue and then it was like, oh, they're playing soon. So we got to kind of hang out a little bit, see the dogs and all that stuff. And then, so she was like, man, I want to go to the mountains again. I want to go to the mountains again. So our flight on Wednesday was not until 6:45 p.m. But because we had rented our car at 3:30, we didn't pay for the extra time to check in the car, so we had to have the car back by 3:30. So she worked until we checked out at 11, and then we decided let's go see Red Rocks. Like, that's not in the mountains, but it's in the foothills, and we're in Colorado. I've seen the Stanley. Let's go see Red Rocks. Let's go see the places. Side note, now whatever. We saw the high school. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Whatever. We went to Red Rocks. We got to park like right at the top of Red Rocks, so we got to see the whole amphitheater. It was way bigger than I expected. Like I've listened to a lot of albums from Red Rocks. I've seen a lot of pictures, but I still thought it was this tiny little venue. It was gigantic, like just enormous, which was really cool. And then we did a little hike around that area. There's a couple of trails. We picked the one. It was like a 1.5 mile trail that wound around a whole bunch of the rock garden structures. Saw some mule deer, and we did see some elk when we were in the national park. We did not see any moose. And that's, so my takeaway, like, we were in the woods, right? Like, we were in the Rocky Mountains. And the lack of wildlife was weird to me. I said this when I was in Poland as well, and maybe it's just because the amount of people that are there generally in that area. Because here, my town is 20,000. We're the 7th largest city in this state. I basically live in the woods by comparison. Like, I'm living in feral wilderness. Because when I leave my house, there is always, 100% of the time, wildlife everywhere around me. There is roadkill constantly. We saw like 3 mule deer and a couple of elk, and that was it. There was no roadkill. We hiked 1.5 miles through the woods. I saw 0 game trails of any kind. There was no rabbits, no squirrels, no deer, like nothing. There was nothing. Here, there are dead squirrels, skunks, fox, coyote, deer everywhere. Like, they're just everywhere. You cannot drive here without seeing wildlife constantly. There was none, which is really bizarre. It's a really weird feeling. But it was magnificently, unbelievably gorgeous. And living in the state that calls itself the mountain state is a joke. Because our mountains are not, the city of Denver is at a higher elevation than the highest mountain here. Right? Like, our highest mountain is like 4,000 feet above sea level. City of Denver is 5,200 or whatever a mile is. So it was really, really amazing. Just unbelievably impressive. And it was so cool to be in like a nice area where it's 70 degrees, and then it's 30 degrees colder as you ascend these mountains in a vehicle, and see these mountain lakes that are still frozen, covered under a foot of snow. It was just absolutely fantastic. Such a beautiful, wonderful experience. I'm really excited that we get to do it. It makes me want to go fire up Red Dead Redemption 2 right now. And relive some of that wild wilderness. It was just so unbelievably beautiful, and we can't wait to go back. Like, she's already talking about, like, we should just go back and get a cabin or whatever. And I said, sure, let's do it. Let's plan it out. Next year or something like that. We can go have a stay and do some more hiking. Maybe do it in a time where it's more hiker friendly and we are more prepared. But it was a beautiful state. My other takeaway was everybody drives the speed limit there. Which is strange. Nobody drives the speed limit here. We're all driving 5 to 10 miles over the speed limit, sometimes 20 in some areas. There, it seemed like everybody drove the speed limit or less. Like, the highways were slow. Traffic sucked. Worse than most places I've been. Okay, that was my take on Colorado. Hope you enjoyed the pictures and such. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again on Monday. Today's word you should know sounds smart is vagary. It is a noun meaning a random or unexpected occurrence. One needs to accept the vagaries of life if one is to be happy or at least content. Vagaries. V-A-G-A-R-Y. I like that. A random or unexpected occurrence. Man, that's a good word. Nothing else to say.